Hello, and welcome to the first in what will hopefully be a long-lasting series that I would like to call Decomposition. This is basically the reverse of composition, where I break down works that I've written and kind of show you some of the thought process that went into it. The first work that I really would like to go to is one that I first felt the most proud of. There's always that first work that, even though you've written a bunch of music in the past, this one really hit home as the one that defined yourself. And this is the first work that I wrote when I was coming into my own, is what I like to call programmatic composing. There's a lot of people that say that they don't exist anymore, but I think they're not as recognized anymore. Pieces don't have the same emotive feeling that there are, but there's programmatic works out there that you just have to look and you can find them. The one that I want to walk you through today, or at least start walking you through, since this is going to end up being a five-part opener to it, because the work itself has five different movements. It's called, I have always pronounced it Equinox, whether you pronounce it Equinox or whatever. I've called it Equinox. I don't care either way, whatever. Um, and it's part of what I had been dreaming about writing for a while, which is a faith triptych. There's a belief in self, a belief in others, and just a belief in existence. Um, the belief in others had already been written by this point. It was a work that's entitled Risio Angelus. It was written for wind ensemble. It's 18 minutes in length, so slightly longer than Equinox, which usually clocks in around 16:30-ish. But that one never got a performance. I was never fully happy with the percussion. And, maybe someday I'll go into that one too. But I wanted to pull this one up because it's the most well-defined. It has a story behind it. You can see all the light motifs and stuff that go through it. So basically what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to read you the story for the movement. At the beginning, I'm going to give you the entirety of it and give you a little bit of a history behind it and everything, and then we'll go through it and we'll just, do this off the cuff. Hopefully, it won't be as stuttering and all over the place in the future as I get a better hang on how to do this. Um, Equinox was written because of Peter Sheridan was coming to Omaha, where I live. Peter Sheridan is a well-known low flute expert, and I heard he was coming, and I sort of half bag, half like got my foot in the door, suggested to Dr. Beard at UNO that, maybe I could write something for when he gets here. And this was in early July of 2015, and he was going to be there at the start of 2016, so it was a good idea. By August 2015, so, we're only talking about a month later, I was knee deep in the midst of writing it, and by the end of August, I was already done with it. So, I get into a project and I get a story in my head and I can write. For the longest time, that was not the case. When I say this was one of the first works that really made that happen for me, it truly was one of the works that made it happen for me. Because it's the point where I realized, I could struggle and struggle and struggle without having a defined storyline that I was trying to tell. But if I had it, I could fire it off left and right. So the story of Equinox basically centers on a tribe. It's not like a Native American tribe. It's not like like a nomad tribe or anything like that. It's just a tribe. It's a very generic tribe. It could be applicable to anything. There are a lot of similarities, but it was not written in the vein of trying to emulate any one specific tribe nationality of the tribes or anything like that. But the tribe itself basically has a very uh, in-depth connection to the world around them. And they go on hunts at the start of spring. They go on, they do dances and such like that. And it's a very typical way of looking at it. And I'm trying not to sound um, in any way insensitive because it's not meant that way. Um, but they, how best to describe it? The chieftain's daughter is our main character of the story, and she has a crisis of faith. She doesn't believe in what other people are bringing her up to believe. There's a lot of beliefs that go around that are shared beliefs, and those ones are usually taught and handed down, and it's up to the person that's receiving them whether or not to take them and run with them, take them and change them so that it makes sense for them, anything like that. But she has a problem believing in it, and it's not something that she understands. So it's one of those things where it's like, if I don't see it, I can't understand it. So the whole story is that as a result of her lack of wanting to be involved because of it, it creates a vacuum and it throws everything into disarray. And, by the end of it, she basically realizes that, she can believe some of what other people can believe. They're not requiring her to believe everything. All they're asking for is a leap of faith to hear them out, to believe in something because it's right for you. And, musically, that's kind of really hard to put into music because one of the challenges with being a composer is that you have to decide music is a translation. It's, I'm speaking one language and I'm writing it down. And then it's a matter of, is it hit or miss with the person on the other side who's hearing it or the person playing it? But let me just go ahead and read you the plot line for the first movement, which is entitled As One Awakes. And then we'll go through a little bit of it. I'll let you hear it, and then we'll break it down a little bit further. A slight fog covers the ground on a cold, brisk morning. The sun peeks out from behind the mountains. A city of natives begins to awaken as well, coming out to begin their celebration for the new year. Those who are old enough for the hunt prepare to ride out as others cheer them on. They ride off the hunt in full swing, and a few hours later, the hunting party comes back to celebrate a successful hunt. Before the celebration begins, the hunting party bends down to pray to the spirits around them and thank them for the continued sustenance. But behind them, a young teenage girl questions what she's seeing. So there are a lot of things to unpack just in that one paragraph. There'll be even more in the later ones. But you look at that and you're like, okay, so how did I really get, and this is the first page of it, I'll show you. It's like, how did I manage to get, what is this? 121 measures out of that. Well, I don't know. One of the challenges is that I had the entire storyline built out, and I said to myself, okay, when you look at existence, and you look at the way that there are so many pieces to the puzzle, every piece has a slightly different shape to it. And to me, those pieces are the different, this is going to sound weird, but the leitmotifs of life. So I thought to myself, okay, so, I have the morning. I have the sun peeking out. I have everyone waking up. I have everyone preparing for the hunt. I have them riding off to the hunt and having the hunt. I have them coming back and praying. And then I have the question of, does this actually make sense? So there's all these different pieces that independently you can pick out. But when you try to put them together, you have to be able to say, even though the pieces can just be jammed in a lot of different ways together, you can have multiple pieces that, when you look at a puzzle, you have the holes and basically the jet outs. I don't know the technical term for them. When I was growing up and we were playing with the Brio wooden Thomas the Tank Engine set, like the original one that came out, the really good stuff. Um, we used to call them pluses and minuses. The pluses were the parts that would jet out, and the minuses would be where you'd hook it into to kind of set it in place so that it wouldn't move. It's kind of like that. You have your parts that stick out on the puzzle pieces, and you have the parts where those pieces connect in with the little jet into the piece. I'll just call them pluses and minuses. You can connect almost any plus to any minus if they are just a very generic setup. But the key is, how do I build a world around all of the light motifs? It's not a matter of, do I have the right motifs? It's a matter of, do I have the right world surrounding it? Equinox would sound totally different, even though I have the same musical fragments, if I'd done it differently and didn't build the world the way that I did. So I think even though it took me a short time relatively, when you think about the fact that within 2 full months I was basically done, um, it really required a lot of, how do I replicate the world that I'm seeing using these fragments? And that's a challenge, because I had to create a world that I hoped, and here's the thing, I hope I can play it for people. They can go, yeah, that makes sense, or that's understandable. But until they hear that story, they don't connect the dots. Music is one of those really tricky things where I may say, okay, look at these first 5 measures that you're seeing on your screen. Those first 5 measures are the fog covering the ground, coming out of all the different holes in the ground and just kind of floating down the mountaintop. But when you see those notes, you don't see that. You see a B flat minor chord, you see a B flat, A flat sustained chord, you see the G flat major 7 chord, but you see all the individual notes. Maybe the conductor may see those chords and go, okay, that's what they're doing, and understand the harmonic progression. But when you're looking at the parts, you're not getting that. And that's part of the challenge, because I want you to get that. But I need to be able to make it understandable that the story flows with it. And before you ask, yes, we did, if I remember correctly, print the story in the sort of like the playbill that went out, the little pamphlet that everyone got. But anyway, yeah, it's a challenge. And one of the things that you might first see if you're used to reading music is that I did not use normal tempo markings in here. I gave the right BPM, the right beats per minute, for what I was hoping for, but the tempo markings themselves are more about the storyline. Um, and if I have a storyline, I will try to put those. I haven't had a case where I've been able to use it later than this. I want to, but I need to get the right story. But let me just go through them. So, Groggy as One Might Awake is kind of both referencing the fog and referencing the sun and referencing the people. They're all waking up for the beginning of the day. The first 5 measures, like I said, are the fog covering the ground. What you see from measures 6 through 10 and going into 11, that's just kind of a resolution. That's the sun peeking out from behind the mountains. It's, let me get my flute out because I didn't plan on doing it, but now I'm going to do this and do transposition at the same time because I don't have the alto. I think there's an alto over somewhere, but I don't have it on me, so I'm going to do the transposition very, very quickly here. So if I mess this up, and I am not tuned up very well, but just to give you the idea, so sound like this. Well, that E flat, you're, but you get it. That's kind of the sun coming out of it. I had a little trouble at the end there because it's kind of hard on a flute to roll from an E flat to a D flat. And then I can't do a B flat on my flute. I can do a B, but not the B flat. Let me put this away for a moment. But yeah, you know, it's sort of like the sun coming out from behind both the fog and coming out from behind the clouds that are up there. So it's nice, and it pulls out of the fog because, as you can see, I'm replicating some of the harmonic elements, saying, well, the fog's still there, but what I need to do is I need to take the performers and the audience and take them from part one to part two. Part one being just a fog. Part two is now, hey, there's fog, but now there's sun. So it just moves on. I kind of came to the conclusion that the best way to move between them is to kind of overlap them. I give you one, then I overlap one with two coming out of it. Now here's two. And then I kind of keep moving on. Like, for example, you hear number 11. This is sort of, at rehearsal 11, basically what you're going to hear is you're going to hear the start of what's basically the, it's sort of like the city theme, the natives, the tribes theme. And it's really, I put my flute away. Why did I put my flute away? It's basically ya da 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 da. And, that I use it in so many different ways. I don't want to spoil it yet where it comes to. What I've learned, especially with having just done a Christmas show for the Kingsville Symphony Orchestra this year, that I used melody to kind of connect the dots from one end of a work to the other. And I used the same melody, and I actually wrote it backwards. And I don't mean I actually literally wrote it backwards, like I wrote this note, then this note, then this note, then this note, then I wrote it in a way that I knew where I was heading, and then I basically devolved it backwards. I knew what the final melody was that I wanted. And then I sort of did it both directions. So I took the melody, and then I wrote basically like a more stripped down version of it, and then I wrote something beforehand, and then I kind of worked my way forward again, and I said, okay, now I'm going to rewrite, now that I've got the first iteration of it, I'm going to rewrite the second and third so that it flows better going forward, just like it did going back. And I kind of went back and forth a few times, so that the third version created the second version, created the first version, which then informed the second version and the third, and you just kind of go back and forth, and that's a process that I like to call smoothing, because it really is smoothing. You're taking the entirety of a work and you're kind of flattening out the bumps that don't need to be there. And I did it here. Looking back, I see it here because you're seeing this 2-measure fragment, kind of echoing between the 2 piccolo parts, uh, cuts its duration or doubles its duration here in a manner of speaking. And eventually we get to a full statement of it, and you'll see that actually in movement 2 when we get there. But this is, like I said, the native theme. This is the tribe theme, and you have to keep that in mind. And it's marked by that jump off of the 5th from here, the G flat to the D flat, or when it resolves in measure 15 from the E flat to the B flat. You have to keep in mind that the alto flute is a transposing instrument that actually transposes down a 4th. So it's, if you want to know the technical thing, it's in G. So when it plays its lowest note of C, it's actually playing the G below middle C. So it gives a little bit of extra stuff. The bass flute is a octave transposition down. It's basically the inversion of the piccolo. Instead of cutting the tube in half, you've doubled the length of the tube, sort of, something like that. But back to the leitmotifs, because it's gotta be quick. This is, honestly, I'll be honest with you, I don't know how much in the future these episodes are going to be able to be streamlined, because this is the random level that composer's mind works. You can write a work that's like, okay, I'm going to do a 1-4-5-1, or a 1-4-2-5-1 progression, being the different scalar chords of it. But we don't think that way. I wouldn't have ever written a G flat chord at measure 11 when I'm in B flat, quote unquote, because of the key signature, if I was locking myself to those chords. I would not be able to write as effective music. And honestly, I have these key signatures in here, but to me, key signatures come later. I don't write with them. When I'm composing, I never have a key signature in. I'll put it in, and then I'll notice where I'm at, and I'll add that stuff in afterwards. But like I said, the level of thought, you can move from element to element very quickly in the composer's mind. And that's why I'm kind of jumping all over the place. Because if you're trying to understand my mind, by looking at this, it helps to see it move from element to element, see how I'm thinking about things. So to continue on with the discussion on the motifs, we go from here, the first 4 measures, here's the theme, it's just kind of, here's the theme, and then it gets restated with sort of like an echo from a different side of the room. Especially if you were in the center of the room, pick 1 was on one side, pick 2 was on the other. So if you were dead center in the room and you heard that, you'd hear it bounce off of one wall, and then you'd hear it bounce off the other. Like it was a call from someone at one side of the town going, "Hey, wake up!" And the person on the other side of the town going, "Okay, I'm awake, now shut up." Just but then we move into this part, which, as you can see, the next page says the hunt begins, but these 8 measures leading into it are like, we're gonna go hunting, ladies and gentlemen, get ready to go. And with the flute sound, because this is a flute choir piece, there was an alto flute played by Peter Sheridan. There were 2 piccolos, 1 on each part. There were, I can't remember, I think it was 2 or 3 people, maybe, yeah, 2 or 3 people on each one of the flute parts. Some alto, I think it was like 3 or 4 altos, and then 3 or 4 basses. So we had a healthy weight to it. For a flute choir, definitely a healthy weight to it. There's not really a hunting horn. Like, you're not going to hear, Like, that probably sounds really horrible at the end, but you don't hear the or something like that. You don't get that effect available to you. But what you can do is you can emulate it in different ways to make people think about it. Um, so when you look at the measure 25 and 26, these two measures right here, this pattern is in octaves. So, you may be like, ooh, that's a high note for an alto flute. These two, this is the same as pick, and this is the same as pick 2. They're just an octave apart, with stuff kind of buried to kind of muddy it a little. And what you hear is a ya da 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 ya da 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 da. And it's sort of majestic enough that the first thing you may think of is, oh wow, yay, did John Williams write that thing? Because it's a lot of chord tones. It's a lot of chord tones. And I mean, I am nowhere near John Williams, but when you have those broken up horns or broken up horn movement patterns that are so majestic sounding, it's right in your face that, hey, this is majestic sounding. The first thing you'll think about it is, this is majestic sounding. And what's more majestic than a horn part? Hey, a horn, we're about to go on a hunt. And a lot of this you don't get the first time through it, but as we go through it, when I play it for you, you'll certainly, hopefully, we'll see. So we get a hunt. So what better way to do a hunt than in a galloping 6/8? You can hear that a lot. It's like, all right, time to go on the horses. I hope that came across okay. That galloping. Patsy over there with the coconuts, banging them together. One of the things you'll see here is my love for mode mixture. Mode mixture, if you don't know, is when you're borrowing notes from other modes of the same tonic. So, like, if you're in D minor, your typical D minor is D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D. A lot of times you hear that last note, that C, be raised a half step. That's actually borrowing the C sharp from the major to create the A major chord. And you'll see it here, we're in A flat. Definitely, if you're trying to follow along with what key we're in, look at the picks and the flute, the standard flutes, the concert flutes, or the bass flute. The alto flutes add a flat or remove a sharp. So it gets really crazy when we're doing things like, let's do some John Williams. Okay, Star Wars, we're in D flat, and the alto's over there. I have 6 flats. But anyway, so we're in A flat, but the first thing out of the gate you see is an A flat, a B flat, a C, and an E flat. I used a lot of chords with additional elements in it, and this was the start of it. There's usually 4 notes to a chord. A lot of times I don't, but most of the time I use 4 notes to a chord to really add more to it without taking away anything. To me, if I can avoid doubling a note with this small of a group, I will do it if it's in the same element. And, what I mean by element is your bass line, your harmony, your counter melody parts, your uh, running in thirds or sixths. Those, to me, are elements. Like at 37, you have 3 elements to me. You have the main harmonic line, which is your bass, your flute 1, 2, and 3. You have sort of like a flourish with the piccolo parts. They're kind of like echoing the melody in the alto. So you have your melody, your flourish, and your basic harmonic structure. To me, if I can avoid duplicating notes within those elements, so if I had a melody and a counter melody, if I can avoid duplicating the same pitch there, cool. The piccolo, as you see, they're in fifths. Ooh, parallel fifths, whatever. Parallel motion in fifths, yay. I want to avoid notes using the same pitch at the same time there too. Even an octave duplication, which means an octave apart. 37's harmonic structure, I try to avoid using the same note between the bass flute, flute 1, flute 2, and flute 3. To me, it fills it out a little bit more because you're not hearing too much weight on one note, and you're better able to control it in my mind. Certainly this approach has its problems as you get to larger ensembles, but it's very useful here because you have so much more acknowledgement of what each part's doing. Like, if you had the score in front of you and you heard that first chord, you'd be able to say, okay, the people that are playing that E flat are on flute 1. You wouldn't have to be like in a full orchestra score where you're like, okay, I heard that E flat. I think it's flute and clarinet. Here, you just know. So to me, it keeps the flow going without really destroying anything, and it keeps the weight light and airy, especially for what I'm wanting it to do right here. But you see it as a result of, you see the result of this in mode mixture. That F flat is borrowed from A flat minor, as is the C flat in the third measure. And then, as you can see, that fourth measure, I kind of pull it back to standard A flat. But with all of that, now that you've got an idea of how I'm building the world, because that's all the world. Because if you look in 37, you see it still happening, but instead of just being ba 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 ba, then it goes into this lively yappa ba 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 ba, and it keeps going that yappa, and it keeps doing that to give the like. It's almost like a field drum where you'd be like, it's giving you the push forward instead of just going ba ba ba. Now, especially with that alto flute part that's going da 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 da, which is giving you the motion where there isn't any motion in the other parts. It's pushing and saying, hey, we got a rhythm going here. Yeah. So there's kind of like a trick that I use there, which is faking motion, and it's kind of hard to describe. Like, I'm one of those composers that the way that I make motion is by faking motion, where 4/4 is the bass line, or 3/4 is the bass line, and what I do is I add or I remove remove beats to keep the movement going. So if you're expecting 2 bars of 4/4, and I've given you that for a while, and I'm like, okay, now I need to mess with your ear a little bit so that you're like, oh, wait, what's he doing? What's he doing? So that you don't get bored, especially so your ear doesn't get bored, I'll remove a beat. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and your brain goes, okay, here comes 4. 1, wait, what? And I do it here, but in reverse. I'm adding what would not normally be played, because normally in 6/8 you get that da 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 da. So I said I'm not giving you the da da because the alto flutes got that. That solo part has that ba ba da ba ba ba. So I went, okay, so what can I do with this? And I said, I'll give you the 2 in the 6/8. You know, not the full 6/8 where it's like basically in two. I mean, this was conducted in two, but you know what I mean. Like 6/8 is typically 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. And I went, okay, what if I take that and went, I'm going to give you the actual 2 in the 6th of the 8. So 1 2 ba 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 ba. So the alto flute can now be like, I'm riding along this galloping horse. Let's go. And I was actually worried about it, and I'll be honest, I was actually worried because the first thing that I figured was going to happen, especially with the tenuto staccato pattern, is that people were going to try and play it, and the first thing they were going to play is bop, 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 bop. But, you know, first things first, trust your performers, because they, you know, honestly, the worry is more on, did I give enough of an instruction that the performer will get what I'm wanting to have happen? And that's really where a lot of the fear of a composer may come from, or at least this composer may come from. Did I give enough instruction? It's not a matter of, did the performers, the orchestra, the flute choir, the wind ensemble, did they not understand correctly? Or was it just something that I completely messed up? And I was worried if what I wrote was going to work in reality. And thankfully it did. So, you know, quick tip to any composers out there, just go with what you think. Um, and then fix it later. uh, so, you know, they're still writing and they're still hunting. You know, I just wanted to keep this going. But 44 for me was kind of like an interlude motif. It doesn't directly have to do with the story. It's just kind of what I would call a little bit of a spice to it, where it's like, oh look, there's something over there to hunt. Oh look, there's something over there to hunt. Oh look, and they're like, let's go hunt. And you know, it's kind of like if you come up and assume you were the leader of a hunt like this, where you're going after, you know, animals so that you can have dinner, or you know, put yourself in that position. You are the leader of the hunting party, and you're sending out these little subgroups. You may have like say 20 people with you, and you send 3 people over there, and 3 people over there, and 3 people over there, and 3 people over there. That's what 44 is. 44 is this group going, hey, we see some stuff over there, we're gonna go get it, and you're like, go for it. And this other group over there is like, hey, we saw some, you know, bear or something like that. Yeah, go for it. And you know, it's that additional level of the story that allows you to tell the same part of the story twice with something in the middle. So, like, as you see, 54 is basically what we saw beforehand. It is literally the exact same thing as 37. Um, the only difference in what I did between 37 and 54 is look at how pick 1 and pick 2 are. It's a fifth based on B flat and then A flat. But when you come over here, it's now flipped. So I basically took the pick 1 part, moved it down to pick 2, and said pick 2 part is now going to be up above it. So instead of stressing the fifth of the chord, that E flat, now I'm stressing the A flat to say, okay, we are going to move on from here. And that's basically what I tried to do with that. I said, we're going to move on. We are not going to go into this A B pattern of just constantly going back and forth between the two. Of we're on a hunt and oh look, an animal. But it's like we're on a hunt again. We're on the move again, and that's what 54 is. You know, it's that we're continuing to move forward. 61 is kind of I think at one point I thought of this as I'm going to show my age here. Oregon Trail, like the original uh, first and second edition of Oregon Trail that we all so lovingly grew up with, or many of us did. You know, you'd go out and you'd be on the trail. Now, imagine a Wild West version of this. But like you're moving along, and then you go, crap, I need to hunt. So you go and you start shooting at bears and stuff like that. And then you're like, okay, now I'm going to move again. And then you go, crap, we need a little bit more food to get to the next fort to buy more food. So if we could just do a very quick hunt, that'd be great. So basically what 61 is, if you look at 61, 62, 63, and 64, so it is literally these four measures. And then come back over here, you will see that it is exactly the same as these 8 measures. Basically, all their rhythms cut in half. It's basically, I told you we got to go do more hunting, but you better hurry up. So they hurry up and they get it done as quick as possible. The last 2 measures, 52 and 53 here, are the exact same as 65 and 66 here. And then I basically pull the tail end of the intro to the hunt back in, and they're moving again. And then we basically get 75 again through, and it's kind of like a more abridged version of what we just had. So, going back to the Oregon Trail thing, I don't know why this is so usable to explain this, but 67 is basically, I'm at the fort, we're getting ready to go, we are loading up stock, and 75 hits, all right, moving out. Moving on up to, anyway, my brain, apologies. Moving on. Yeah, so 75 is, like I said, same thing as 54 and 37. How does Adam Neely put it? Repetition legitimizes. And that's exactly why repetition legitimizes. I'm not going to do that stick any more than that. But there's a lot of repetition in here because it's a framework that people feel comfortable with. If everything you did was completely new, there'd be no way for people to latch on to the underlying storyline. Imagine like the Zelda theme. If you haven't heard it, go listen to it. Imagine if the next time that it went through and it was about to do the repeat where it jumps back to the beginning, because that's how video game music works. It didn't, and it went, all right, now I'm going to give you something new, and then I'm going to give you something new, and something new. And you could sit there and it would just procedurally create new and more music. Say there was never any end to it. Or maybe 20 minutes down the line, you get back to the beginning. Your ear is so not aligned to what that would do that you would think that the beginning is something completely new, even though you heard it 20 minutes earlier. So Adam's right. Repetition legitimizes. It basically knocks that framework into people's heads and says, this is the central idea. Or, this at least holds everything together. And that's basically true, which is why I felt I could put 75 and 82 back in here. And then if you notice, 92, those first 4 measures are the same as the first 4 measures of 67. I truncated it. But then what do we get is we get this. Lovely, hunt is successful. I put constant 8th note here because we're moving from 6/8 to 3/4, which normally is constant. So if you go from 6/8 to 3/4, the way that I feel it, if I don't tell you otherwise, is 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. You can have it be a Listessa tempo, which if I'm doing it right, 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. So at that point, the beat stays the same, not the rhythm of the beat stays the same, or the temporal duration of the beat stays the same, not the actual underlying fragment that constitutes a beat staying the same. The underlying, so like 6/8 underlying fragment is that eighth note. So so if the eighth note stays constant into the 3/4, the eighth note's still going to be the same. So you could still go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, counting all the eighth notes in 3/4. But I put constant because I wanted to make it very much clear that that's what I was wanting to happen and not a switch. So we get this ba-ba, 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 and then we do this lovely gliss. So ba-ba, 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 ba-da, 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 ba-da. So this is a success theme. This is a celebration of the successful hunt. You know that we're back. We did it, yo. We did it. We hunted some animals and we got food for a few days. Yo, we're good. And that's basically what it is. And this is kind of also like the prayer that is like, you know, they're thankful that they got this far. They're thankful they all managed to make it home. And we're coming up to the point where the young teenage girl is questioning it. And as you can see, we are in oh crap. Gee, I'm trying to remember where I'm at because I'm in a weird key. We're basically in that. This is one of the things where I'm not directly in the key that I'm thinking I'm supposed to be in. We are technically in E flat. I started on the 4th, so A flat. I had to be careful because there are times where I'm not in the key that I appear to be in. I'm, you know, we all think in major and minor so often that when I looked at this, I went, okay, I see 3 flats. I'm in E flat. But then I went, wait a minute. Is that right? Am I in C minor? I am actually in, I am actually in E flat because I was going to resolve this originally. Now that I think about it, I was going to resolve this in the order that the plot line was written. But then I thought about it and I'm like, okay, so we had a successful hunt. And then I went on to say, if you remember back to the story, that, you know, before they truly are going to celebrate, they bend down to pray to the spirits and thank them for the continued sustenance. And then I said, behind them a young teenage girl questions what she's seeing. But I said to myself, and this is one of the things that came in as an afterthought after trying like a few different things. I said, okay, so why can't she be questioning what they're doing right when they get back and they're all happy about the hunt being successful? And I said, no, I can't do that because the Word document that I had it in this order. And then I said, oh, wait a minute. The only reason that Word document has it in that order is because it will look really stupid to have the jump between the two groups. Writing out a story was basically the way that I started to write the music. But for probably the first 2 weeks, as I was writing the first movement, because the rest of them came fairly quickly after that, I felt like I was having to honor the plot line. And what I realized very quickly is that it's not about honoring the plot line, it's about acknowledging the plot line. It's about saying that the plot line is a framework in which you're telling a musical story. You know, the plot tells you every event that you're wanting to describe, but it's not necessarily telling you how to describe them. And what I said was, I can't verbally interrupt a statement with another statement. I can't be saying, I can't have two versions of me with one version going, hey, a few hours later, the hunting party comes back to celebrate, and then over top of it here, behind them, a young teenage girl questions. But I can do it musically. I can interrupt and freeze time for one group of people and pull you aside over here. It happens all the time in musicals where we have the inner thoughts. When you look at Wicked, at the very beginning, or near the beginning of the show, there's a song called The Wizard and I. Is it happening all in Elphaba's head where she's thinking about all these great things that she can do with the wizard? Yeah, sure. A lot of it probably is. She's probably not literally running around going, singing and singing, and I'm just doing it that way to avoid copyright, any copyright claim. But there's a certain time where you can freeze the action and go into an introspective nature where you're going into someone's thoughts, into someone's feelings, and they're also technically frozen, but you're actually hearing them say it because it makes the most sense for them to be the ones to say it. So musically speaking, you see this big crescendo right here before the forte piano and the fortissimo. That's what it is. It's like, we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it, and then I crash the party with the alto flute going, but I'm questioning what's going on here. I don't get this. And one of the interesting ways that I did that was I said, okay, I could have written that chord in a much different way, but I wanted it to be so completely off balance. So I said, okay, I'm in flats. I know I'm only 8 measures into the continued use of this key signature, but I'm going to go from using flats to using sharps, like that. And I said, okay, so what's the furthest that I could get from E flat? And I said, well, furthest would be, A or D. So I said, ooh, a B. I thought to myself, the tritone, the A, I couldn't easily make it happen. And it would just sound, honestly, I think my thought process was that B flat chord that you see, that B flat 7 chord that you see in the crescendoing measure right here, if I would have played an A, it wouldn't have sounded as jarring. Because, I could have taken that B flat, rounded it to an A, and then jumped you to D major or D minor, and no one would have thought anything too much of it. It would have been jarring for a moment, but then it would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I decided, what would be the most jarring thing that I could do? And I said, okay, the ear is expecting an E flat or C, an A flat. It could be expecting an A, depending on what comes of the A. But would it expect a B natural? Now, musically, your ear really doesn't think of it that way. Your ear doesn't go, okay, I'm hearing the 5th, that's a B flat, am I hearing a B natural next? What it's hearing is it's sort of acting like it's about to do the flat 6, flat 7, 1, the Mario cadence. Where it's like da 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 da, or well, that was more like the 1, 2, 3. Da 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 da. Like that part. Those notes raising up. You hear the chord move up that way. And technically, C flat major would be the flat 6 leading into the D flat, into the E flat to resolve us. But I said, no, I don't want to do a C flat chord. I want to keep one note constant and throw everybody else off. Right here. I went from B flat to B minor. The hinge point is also the highest note that you hear, still continuing. You're going to hear the third in this chord, in this B flat chord. Your ear is going to lock onto it because that's how your ear determines whether a chord is major or minor, because your ear definitely tries to categorize. And it still hears it and it focuses on it, and then you're left with it when we transition, and your ear's like, wait a minute, that D made it major, now that D's making it minor? Oh wait, excuse me, it's the same D here. And I went, okay, that's got to be jarring. And it is, at least I felt like it was, for what it needed to be. And then I just keep the same chord, and I kind of respell it. So I take that B minor chord and I say, okay, now let's pretend like I'm in B major, but not in B major, and leave that third alone. So I get this really wonky G sharp. Oh, what is this? This is half diminished or diminished. Rule number one: don't do this late. Just kidding. But by doing it as a G sharp chord with a G sharp, a B, a D, and an F sharp, I had the makings of resolving to A major, the makings of resolving to A minor, or anything in between, really. You know, there's a lot of different things that could resolve that too. But I let the solo alto flute resolve it in a very interesting way, and it accomplished two things. The first thing that it accomplished is it resolved her into this I'm uncertain type of melody, where now here's the thing: the flute parts that you see here bouncing around are her being completely uncertain, because as you see, you've got a flat minor 7, an F major 7, an A flat minor 7, an F major 7. The chords are just rocking back and forth because she doesn't know what she's wanting to do out of it. And this is sort of like the prayer theme. And I state it here just to give you a taste of it. It will come back. And to end it, I have that same G sharp chord, but down a half step. And it really kind of leaves us on a very sour note, where on one hand, your prayer theme is saying, you know, we give thanks, but we acknowledge the sacrifice. And the chieftain's daughter is basically going, I acknowledge the sacrifice being made, but I don't understand why. I don't understand why it has to be this way. I cannot accept it just because you're telling me that's the way. So what I want to do, now that we've made it to the end of this first movement, and I've yapped on for almost an hour, is I want to let you hear the first movement as it was performed on the 2nd of March in 2016 by the Heartland Community Flute Choir with Peter Sheridan playing. Now, this is the world premiere. I was in attendance, and I could not have been more proud of everybody playing this. Now, I will say this much. When I write dynamics, they are relative. So, at the beginning, it will not sound like triple P, triple piano. It will, I know, should not have called it tuba piano, but it will not sound this soft. It will, however, be perfectly wonderful. So, with all of that being said, and with having taken the last hour to give you the history and this, that, and the other related to it, and give you a basic understanding of how I put this first movement together, I am now going to share with you the first movement of Equinox and let you see the scores that go through. Enjoy. So, I look forward to your comments, your thoughts, and whatever. Um, I will see you in the next one when we go into what is likely to be very confusing. All right. See you all then.